Okay, hello everyone. My name is Amanda Singh. I am a recent Humber graduate, and today I have the pleasure of introducing the artist performances for today. Um, when posting about the conference, please use the hashtag Cultures Compass 2020. And now I have two dynamic poets here with me, Nicole Sealey and John Murillo. They will be our first performers for the day. Uh, Born in St. Thomas, U.S. Virgin Islands, and raised in Apopka, Florida, Nicole Sealey is the author of Ordinary Beast and the Animal After Whom Other Animals Are Named, which was the winner of the 2015 Drinking Gourd Chapbook Poetry Prize. Nicole is also the former executive director at Cave Canem Foundation and has received many honors, including but not limited to the Elizabeth George Foundation grant, the Stanley Kunitz Prize from the American Poetry Review, and her recent Rome Prize for Literature. Joining Nicole Sealey today is John Murillo, the author of the poetry collections Up Jump the Boogie, which was the finalist for both the Kate Tufts Discovery Award and the Penn Open Book Award. John has two Larry Neal Writers Awards, a pair of Pushcart Prizes, and the J. Howard and Barbara M.J. Wood Prize from the Poetry Foundation. He is also an assistant professor of English at Wesleyan University and teaches in the Low Residency Program, the MFA program at Sierra Nevada University. And now we will have our first performance by Nicole, and following that, John Murillo.
Thank you so much, Amanda. Thank you for that warm introduction. Thank you to Humber's, Jennifer, Kyla, and everybody there. Thank you for the invitation. Sorry about that. And all of you in attendance. So I'm going to read just a few poems, and then John will follow. The first of which is a poem for my mom. It's called "The First Person Who Will Live to Be 150 Years Old Has Already Been Born." Scientists say the average human life gets 3 months longer every year. By this math, death will be optional, like a tie or dessert or suffering. My mother asks whether I'd want to live forever. I'd get bored, I tell her. But she says there's so much to do, meaning she believes there's much she hasn't done. 30 years ago, she was the age I am now, but unlike me, too industrious to think about birds disappeared by rain. If only we had more time or enough money to be kept on ice until such a time science could bring us back. Of late, my mother has begun to think life short-lived. I'm too young to convince her otherwise. The one and only occasion I was in the same room as the Mona Lisa, it was encased in glass behind what I imagine were velvet ropes. There's far less between ourselves and oblivion, skin that often defeats its very purpose. Or maybe its purpose isn't protection at all, but rather to provide a place similar to a doctor's waiting room in which to sit until our names are called. Hold your questions until the end. Mother, measure my wide open arms. We still have this much time to kill. Hysterical strength. When I hear news of a hitchhiker struck by lightning yet living, or a child lifting a 2-ton sedan to free his father pinned underneath, or a camper fighting off a grizzly with her bare hands until someone, a hunter perhaps, can shoot it dead, my thoughts turn to Black people, the hysterical strength we must possess to survive our very existence, which I fear many believe is and treat as itself a freak occurrence. This next poem was inspired by a work of art by the artist Thomas Hirshhorn, and the piece looks like was a bunch of mannequins wrapped in brown duct tape and lifted on a wooden structure. So this is a poem inspired by that piece. It's called Candelabra with Heads. Had I not brought with me my mind as it has been made, this thing, this brood of mannequins, cocooned and mounted on a wooden scaffold, might be 8 infants swaddled and sleeping, might be 8 fleshy fingers on one hand, might be a family tree with 8 pictured frames. Such treaties occur in the brain. Can you see them hanging? Their shadow is a crowd stripping the tree of souvenirs. Skin shrinks and splits, the body's weak fat the color of yolk. Can you smell them burning? Their perfume climbing as wisteria would a trellis. As wisteria would a trellis burning, their perfume climbing, fat the color of yolk. Can you smell them? Skin shrinks and splits, the body's weak. Is a crowd stripping the tree of souvenirs. Can you see them hanging, their shadow frames? Such treaties occur in the brain. Might be a family tree with 8 pictured. Might be 8 fleshy fingers on one hand. Might be 8 infants swaddled and sleeping and mounted on a wooden scaffold. This brood of mannequins cocooned as it has been made. This thing, had I not brought with me my mind, who can see this and not see lynchings? This next poem was inspired by the last poem. In my chapbook, The Animal After Whom Other Animals Are Named, at the suggestion of editors, I extracted the last line, who can see this and not see lynchings? But in my full-length Ordinary Beast, I decided to include that last line because I thought it was important. So this poem speaks to that decision to include that last line. It's called In Defense of Candelabra with Heads. If you've read the candelabra with heads that appears in this collection and the one in the animal, thank you. The original, the one included here, is an example, I'm told, of a poem that can speak for itself, but loses faith in its ability to do so by ending with a thesis question. Yeats said a poem should click shut like a well-made box. I don't disagree. I ask who can see this and not see lynchings, not because I don't trust you, dear reader, or my own abilities. I ask because the imagination would have us believe, much like faith the original candelabra lacks in things unseen. You should know that human limbs burn like branches and branches like human limbs. Only after man began hanging man from trees, then setting him on fire, which would jump from limb to branch like a bastard species of bird, did we come to know such things. 100 years from now, October 9, 2116, 8:18 p.m., when all but the lucky are good and dead, may someone happen upon the question in question. May that lucky someone be Black and so far removed from the verb lynch that she be dumbfounded by its meaning. May she then call up Hirshhorn's candelabra with heads. May her imagination, not her memory, run wild. This next poem takes its title from the motto of Equinox, which is a luxury gym. It's called It's Not Fitness, It's a Lifestyle. I'm waiting for a white woman in this overpriced Equinox to mistake me for someone other than a paying member. I can see it now as I leave the steam room, naked but for my wedding ring. She'll ask whether I've finished cleaning it. Every time I'm at an airport, I see a bird flying around inside, so fast I can't make out its wings. I ask myself, what is it doing here? I've come to answer, what is any of us? Medical history. I've been pregnant. I've had sex with a man who's had sex with men. I can't sleep. My mother's mother had asthma. My father had a stroke. My father's mother has high blood pressure. Both grandfathers died from diabetes. I drink. I don't smoke. Xanax for flying, propranolol for anxiety. My eyes are bad. I'm spooked by wind. Cousin Lily died from an aneurysm. Aunt Ilda, a heart attack. Uncle Ken, wise as he was hit by a car, as if to disprove whatever theory toward which I write. And I understand the stars in the sky are already dead. Here's a short one. It's called Heretofore Unuttered. As if God, despite his compulsions, were decent and hadn't the tendency to throw off all appearance of decorum, here I am, admiring this single violet orchid. How lucky am I to go unnoticed, or so I imagine, when at this writing there's a red-tailed hawk somewhere tracking the soft shrills of newborn songbirds. I think I just have a handful more, which is to say three more. Imagine Sisyphus happy. Give me tonight to be inconsolable, so the death drive does not declare itself, so the moonlight does not convince sunrise. I was born before sunrise, when morning masquerades as night, the temperature of blood, quivering like a mouth in mourning. How do we author our gentle birth, the height we were? Were we gods rolling stars across a sundog sky, the same as scarabs? We fit somewhere between God and mineral, angel and animal, believing a thing as sacred as the sun rises and falls like an ordinary beast. Deer sniff lifeless fawns before leaving. Elephants encircle the skulls and tusks of their dead, none wanting to leave the bones behind, none knowing their leave will lessen the loss. But birds pluck their own feathers. Dogs lick themselves to wound. Allow me this luxury. Give me tonight to cut and salt the open. Give me a shovel to uproot the mandrake and listen for its scream. Give me a face that toils so closely with stone, it is itself stone. I promise to enter the flesh again. I promise to circle, to ascend. I promise to be happy tomorrow. Even the gods. Even the gods misuse the unfolding blue. Even the gods misread the wind flowers nod towards sunlight as consent to consume. Still, you envy the horse that draws their chariot, bone of their bone. The wilting mash of air alone keeps you from scaling Olympus with gifts of dead or dying things dangling from your mouth, your breath like the sea inching away. It is rumored gods grow where the blood of a hanged man drips. You insist on being this man. The gods abuse your grace. Still, you'd rather live among the clear, cloudless white, enjoying what is left of their ambrosia. Who should be happy this time? Who brings cake to whom? Pray the gods do not misquote your covetous pulse for chaos, the black from which they were conceived. Even the eyes of gods must adjust to light. Even gods have gods. And my final poem is for my husband, John. He's next. It's called Object Permanence. We wake as if surprised the other is still there, each petting the sheet to be sure. How have we managed our way to this bed, beholden to heat like dawn indebted to light? Though we're not so self-important as to think everything has led to this, everything has led to this. There's a name for the animal love makes of us, named, I think, like rain for the sound it makes. You are the animal after whom other animals are named. Until there's none left to laugh, days will start with the same startle and end with caterpillars gorged on milkweed. Oh, how we entertain the angels with our brief animation. Oh, how I'll miss you when we're dead. Thank you so much.
Hey, hey. Can you guys hear me okay? Yeah. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Nicole. I am the animal after whom other animals are named, she says. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Kyla. Thank you, Jennifer, Gordon. Thank you, Humber. Thank you, everybody, for showing up. This is fun. This is fun. Also, while I have all these eyes on me, want to shout out another poet that I've seen in the comment thread named Monica Sock, whose book, A Nail the Evening Hangs On, is a wonderful, wonderful debut. She's a young poet who you guys are going to be hearing a lot from in the coming years. So and she's part of the same tribe as Nicole and I. So if you like our work, you will probably like her work. So check her out, Monica Sock, S-O-K. All right. I'm going to actually highlight another poet, a poet you guys have heard of, I'm sure, Robert Hayden. And I want to read a sonnet of his in tribute to all the people out there who have been on the front lines protesting, people who have been in their homes protesting and doing what they can to support those people. I think a change is afoot, and I'm here for it. This sonnet is called Frederick Douglass. When it is finally ours, this freedom, this liberty, this beautiful and terrible thing, needful to man as air, usable as earth, when it belongs at last to all, when it is truly instinct, brain matter, diastole, systole, reflex action, when it is finally one, when it is more than the gaudy mumbo jumbo of politicians, this man, this Douglass, this former slave, this Negro beaten to his knees, exiled, visioning a world where none is lonely, none hunted, alien, this man, superb in love and logic, this man shall be remembered. Oh, not with statues' rhetoric, not with legends and poems and wreaths of bronze alone, but with the lives grown out of his life, the lives fleshing his dreams of the beautiful, needful thing. That's Robert Hayden. Okay, so I have good news and bad news for you guys. The good news is I'm only going to read 2 poems. The bad news is that they are the Odyssey and the Iliad. Just kidding. I stole that joke, but I like it, so I use it. But these are long poems, so I'm going to read just two of them. And they're both from my new collection, Contemporary American Poetry. The first is called On Confessionalism. Not sleepwalking, but waking still with my hand on a gun and the gun in a mouth and the mouth on the face of a man on his knees. Autumn of '89, and I'm standing in a Section 8 apartment parking lot, pistol cocked, and staring down at this man, then up into the mug of an old woman staring, watering the single sad flower to the left of her stoop, the flower also staring. My engine idling behind me, a slow moaning bass line and the bark of a dead rapper nudging me on, all to say someone's brokenhearted. And this man with the gun in his mouth, this man who, like me, is really little more than a boy, may or may not have something to do with it, may or may not have said a thing or two, betrayed a secret, say, that walked my love away. And why not say it? She adored me, and I, her, more than anyone, anything in life up to then, and then still for 2 decades after, and therefore went for broke. Blacked out and woke, having gutted my piggy and pawned all my gold to buy what a homeboy said was a Beretta. Blacked out and woke, my hand on a gun, the gun in a mouth, a man who was really a boy on his knees. And because I loved the girl, I actually paused before I pulled the trigger. Once, twice, 3 times, then panicked not just because the gun jammed, but because what if it hadn't? Because who did I almost become there that afternoon in a Section 8 apartment parking lot, pistol cocked with the sad flowers staring? Because I knew the girl I loved, no matter how this all played out, would never have me back. Day of damaged ammo or grime, they clogged the chamber. Day of faulty rods or springs come loose in my fist. Day nobody died. So why not hallelujah, say amen or thank you? My mother sang for years of God, babes, and fools. My father, lymph node masses fading from his x-rays, said surviving one thing means another comes and kills you. He's dead, and so I trust him. Dead, and so I'd wonder years about the work I left undone. Boy on his knees, a man now, risen, and likely plotting his long way back to me. Fuck it. I tucked my tool like the movie gangsters do and jumped back in my bucket. Cold enough day to make a young man weep. Afternoon when everything or nothing changed forever. The dead rapper grunted, the bass line faded. My spirits whispered something from the trees. I left, then lost the pistol in a storm drain, somewhere between that life and this. Left the pistol in a storm drain, but never got around to wiping away the prints. So that's one poem. Thank you guys for listening. This is a really, really dope idea. This conference, this festival, and we appreciate you making time for us this morning. The second poem is another long one, but stay with me. And I won't say too much to introduce the poem. Nicole says I say too much about it, so I won't. But I'll only say that the title is a bleeding title, meaning the title ends up being the first line of the poem. So I'll read the title and then just go from there. Upon reading that Eric Dolphy transcribed even the calls of certain species of birds, I think first of two sparrows I met when walking home late night years ago in another city not unlike this. The one bird frantic, attacking, I thought, the way she swooped down, circled my head and flailed her wings in my face. How she seemed to scream each time I swung. How she dashed back and forth between me and a blood-red Corolla parked near the opposite curb. How, finally, I understood. I spied another bird, also calling, his foot inexplicably caught in the car's closed door, beating his whole bird body against it, trying, it appeared, to bang himself free. And who knows how long he'd been there, flailing. Who knows? He and the other I mistook at first for a bat. They called to me, something between squawk and chirp, something between song and prayer, to do something, anything. And like any good God, I disappeared. Not indifferent exactly, but with things to do and most likely on my way home from another heartbreak. Call it 1997 and say I'm several thousand miles from home, by which I mean those were the days I made of everyone a love song. By which I mean I was lonely and unrequited. But that's not quite it either. Truth is, I did manage to find a few to love me, but couldn't always love them back. The Rasta law professor, the firefighter's wife, the burlesque dancer whose daughter blackened drawings with M's to mean the sky was full of birds the day her daddy died. I think his widow said he drowned one morning on a fishing trip. Anyway, I'm digressing. But if you asked that night, did I mention it was night? Why I didn't even try to jimmy the lock to spring the sparrow, I couldn't say truthfully that it had anything to do with envy, with wanting a woman to plead as deeply for me as these sparrows did one for the other. No, I'd have said something instead about the neighborhood itself. The car thief shot a block and a half east the week before, or about the men I came across nights prior, sweat slicked and shirtless, grappling in the middle of the street, the larger one's chest pressed to the back of the smaller, bruised and bleeding both. I know you thought this was about birds, but stay with me. I left them both in the street, the same street where I'd leave the sparrows, the men embracing, and for all one knows, they could have been lovers. The one whispering an old tune into the ear of the other, baby, baby, don't leave me this way. I left the men where I'd leave the sparrows and their song. And as I walked away, I heard one of the men call to me, please, or help, or brother, or some such. And I didn't break stride, not one bit. It's how I've learned to save myself. Let me try this another way. Call it 1977 and say I'm back west, south central Los Angeles. My mother and father at it again, but this time in the street, broad daylight, and all the neighbors watching. One, I think his name was Sonny, runs out from his duplex to pull my father off. You see where I'm going with this. My mother crying out, fragile as a sparrow. Sonny fighting my father, fragile as a sparrow. And me, years later, trying to get it all down. As much for you, I'm saying, as for me. Sonny catches a left, lies flat on his back, blood starting to pool, and his own wife wailing. My mother wailing, and traffic backed now half a block. Horns, whistles, and soon sirens. 1977, summer, and all the trees full of birds. Hundreds, I swear. And since I'm the one writing it, I'll tell you they were crying. Which brings me back to Dolphy and his transcribing. The jazz man, I think, wanted only to get it down pure, to get it down exact. The animal racking itself against the car's steel door, the animals in the trees reporting, the animals we make of ourselves and one another, flailing, failing, stay with me now. Days after the dust up, my parents took me to the park, and in this park was a pond, and in this pond were birds, not sparrows, but swans. And my father spread a blanket and brought from a basket some apples and a paring knife. Summertime. My mother wore sunglasses and long sleeves. My father, now sober, cursed himself for leaving the radio. But my mother forgave him and said, as she caressed the back of his hand, that we could just listen to the swans. And we listened, and I watched. Two birds coupling, one beating its wings as it mounted the other. Summer 1977, I listened and watched. When my parents made love late into that night, I covered my ears in the next room, scanning the encyclopedia for swans. It meant nothing to me, then at least. But did you know the collective noun for swans is a lamentation? And is a lamentation not its own species of song? What a woman wails, punch drunk in the street, or what a widow might sing, learning her man was drowned by swans, a lamentation of them. Imagine the capsized boat, the panicked man struck about the eyes, nose, and mouth each time he comes up for air. Imagine the birds coasting away and the waters suddenly calm, either trumpet swans or mutes. The dead man's wife running for help, crying to any who listen. A lamentation, and a city busy saving itself. I'm digressing, sure. But did you know that to digress means to stray from the flock? When I left my parents' house, I never looked back, by which I mean I made like a god and disappeared. As when I left the sparrows and the copulating swans, as when someday I'll leave this city, it's every flailing, it's every animal song. Thank you guys.
Thank you again, Nicole and John. It was a pleasure having two highly regarded and accomplished poets with us today. And now we'll be taking an hour break. We will be back again at 1 p.m. with financial sustainability and fundraising.